Greetings, travelers, and welcome back to Goldbound. Our rogue, Goldilocks, is still locked within the borders of Elwynn Forest. He can't leave, not until he earns enough gold to buy a WoW token. Only then can he pay the gold toll and unlock the next chapter of his journey, a neighboring zone. Now, there are a few ground rules to keep Goldilocks honest. First off, he's solo self-found, which means every item must be gathered, looted, quested, or bought from vendors within unlocked zones. Stormwood counts, but primarily for banking and auction house access, so we can sell to other players, but we can't buy. No trades, no shortcuts, just raw effort turned into raw gold. And the price of freedom being a WoW token, that varies with the market from day to day. Not only is the WoW token price up, but so is the supply of every single item Goldilocks has been farming. On our last swing through Mother Fang's cave, we weren't alone. A whole crew of travelers were already camped out. Some looked a little familiar. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I love seeing people take on this challenge, but I'll be honest, it's getting a little crowded in Elwynn. Prices have taken a hit. Frayed knots are at a literal all-time low. Copper bolts are selling for half of what they were, and alabaster pigments, they're barely worth more than the herbs they came from. Why? Well, people are watching Goldilocks' journey and trying it themselves. And that's great, really, and the market will bounce back. So if you're trying this in the future, I'm sure you'll have a bit more of a fruitful adventure. But for now, it means we have to get a little more creative. Think outside the box. Post some new items and find new ways to turn dirt into gold. And I figured it was time. Time to lean into a method as legendary as the zone itself. And if you grew up in the golden age of WoW, and you've ever seen that episode, you know exactly where this is going. There was one sacred path. One strategy. So mind-numbingly simple, so painfully inefficient, that only true heroes dared attempt it. And yet, it worked. And if my childhood taught me anything, it's that when you're out of options, down on your luck, in Elwynn Forest, there's only one answer. Grind the boars. They're not exactly known for any lucrative drop table, and there's no rare world drops, no surprise blues, no rusty sword of 1,000 truths. And boar meat only sells for a few silver, and we can't cook it into anything that's worth much at all. So it's really not worth the time in that sense. So the value has to come from somewhere else. Skinning. But light leather is only going for about 1 gold each. So I made a plan. A 4-step process to turn this sad little farm into something maybe profitable. But before we get into the 4-step plan, we need to kill them faster. You see, these boars spawn all over Elwynn Forest. But they're mixed in with wolves and bears, and they're pretty far apart. Not terrible, but we're not here for wolves and bears. We need pure boar density. So I started mapping, looking for a loop with minimal filler. No fur, no fangs, just leather. And what I found was amazing. You see, down south in Elwynn is a small and unassuming vineyard. McClure Vineyard. Grapes, sure. But more importantly, boars. Roughly 8 spawn around the farm. But here's where it gets interesting. You see, they're tied to a quest, which means they're hyper spawn coded. If you're not familiar with hyper spawns, here's the breakdown. As long as players are killing them, the game forces at least 1 or 2 to always be alive. So no matter how fast you clear them, they keep on coming. And because the vineyard is tight in a small area, it's the perfect live to win grind spot. Now the only thing left is to leverage my extensive macro writing experience from my totally legitimate Challenger Arena titles. And I built a boar aimbot. So basically, this is a 1-button boar killing machine. It casts my range abilities, pops my movement speed cooldowns, pops my damage cooldowns on repeat. So I just walk in circles pressing this key, and the boars die on repeat. Here's how you run this farm properly. You don't loot. Seriously. Just kill them on repeat for 3 to 4 minutes straight. No looting, no skinning, just boar after boar. And they'll start stacking up. A nice, satisfying boar pile. Then, once the ground is properly cursed, then you loot. You skin them all in one go, and it's just way faster with less downtime. No breaking the flow. Just don't push it past the 4-minute kill window, because the boar corpses will start despawning, and there's nothing worse than watching your gold rot in the dirt. Theoretically, if you were doing this in a group with 2, 3, 4, or 5 people, you could kill them a lot faster because of the hyperspawn. You would just each camp one corner of the farm, and it would get pretty nasty pretty quickly. But that's step 1. Killing efficiently, stacking corpses, and skinning fast. And now, we move on to step 2, leatherworking. And this is where the magic happens. First, we'll reduce every ruined leather scrap into light leather. Free mats, no brainer. And then, we do have to level up our leatherworking to level 55. This is where you unlock the real value play. The leather gloves. But why the gloves? Well, they only cost 3 light leather per craft, and if you compare that to the 5, 6, or 8 of some other green armor pieces, it's a lower input to get to a disenchantable item. So, we'll get better margins. Because we're not crafting the gear, we're crafting for a disenchant shuffle. And I'll be honest, this is where the shuffle took a turn. You see, I had a plan. I was going to use the leatherworking modifier, Relics of the Past, to scale these gloves in level. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could squeeze out higher level greens using nothing but Elwynn mats, and then disenchant those scaled greens for better and better enchanting materials. It was a clean plan and a clever plan, and it might have even worked, but there was just one problem. Curing salt. It's a basic vendor ingredient needed for the Relic of the Past recipe. And guess what? The trade goods vendors in Elwynn just don't sell it. So I guess we'll have to wait to see if the shuffle really pays off when I unlock a new trade goods vendor that has the curing salt. I mean, we've still got the greens, so we can swap over to enchanting on some basic disenchanting. Unfortunately, the disenchanting mats, when you work it out, actually sell for less than the leather that went into them. So this gold farm is a loser. At least for now. Because this brings us to Goldilocks' next fork in the road. While I was out here quietly slaughtering hundreds of boars, a certain traveling attraction rolled into town. The Darkmoon Fair. Now, the fair rotates through a few zones, but when it's set up in Elwynn, it opens a portal, right here in the forest, that takes players to the Darkmoon Isle. And that raises a question, a big one. Since we're locked into Elwynn Forest for this challenge, is the Darkmoon Fair fair game? On one hand, it's kind of like an instance. There's no way to reach it, unless the portal appears in Elwynn, and it doesn't show up on the world map, and there's no achievement for exploring it. But on the other hand, it's definitely not a part of Elwynn Forest. And if we're being honest, it's definitely a bit of a gray area. Regular dungeons and instances will eventually be allowed. They're tied to the zone, they're static, and they fit the lore of the zone. But Darkmoon, it's definitely a wild card. And here's what tipped the scale for me. You see, I know a few freakishly efficient farms at the fair. Ones that would effectively nullify the gold per hour I've clawed together here in Elwynn. And for that reason, we're leaving it out. The Darkmoon Fair will not be a part of the pure Elwynn Forest run. Now, it's also technically not a zone, so it's not going to appear in the randomizer when we unlock our next destination, but don't worry. I've got plans for Goldilocks to return to the Darkmoon Fair. Just not now, which means we're back to the Elwynn locked gold farms. And our next step, try to squeeze just a bit more gold per hour out of our gathering setup. But hey, just because Goldilocks is stuck in the past, farming low-level mobs for vendor trash, doesn't mean you have to be. So whether you're playing retail, classic, season discovery, or kata, if you want to actually enjoy making gold, and make a lot of it, maybe even earn a WoW token or two, then check out Goldcapped. They've got hundreds of guides for every version of the game, plus access to premium discords full of other content creators and master farmers who can point you in the right direction. Some that don't spend all their days skinning hyperspawn boars. Membership gets you access, but they also have individual guides if you're interested, so I'll drop a link below. And use code Pathalerix10 to save 10% and help support the channel. Alright, Goldilocked is back at it. After developing the Elwynn Shuffle in episodes 1 and 2, and discovering that, yes, you can actually mine ore while mounted, but not herbs, I started thinking, is dual gathering really worth it? Or would I make more gold per hour just mining nonstop? So today, we're putting it to the test. 3 runs, 1 hour each. First up, mining only. We'll be able to stay mounted for this entire run, and I'm thinking it might be pretty efficient. Second, we're going to be doing dual gathering, our classic mining and herbalism gathering method. And third, just to make sure we're being exhaustive, we're going to do herbalism only. We're keeping it simple, and for the calculations, I am going to process these with the Elwynn Shuffle, but we're going to exclude the processing time for the ores and herbs, because frankly, the herbs process so fast, and I just smelt the bars and make the copper bolts while cooking dinner or vacuuming, or maybe even watching some YouTube. So let's get into it. First up, 1 hour of mining only. And for mining only, we walked away with 631 copper ore, as well as 15 gems. Now at a pre-shuffle rate of about 4 gold, 50 silver per ore, that's 2,839 gold straight up. But once we smelt it all down and convert to copper bolts, so we bump our total final value to about 4,600 gold for the hour. That's pretty respectable for a starting zone. And next up, an hour of dual gathering. In this hour, we managed to pull 306 copper ore, 202 silver leaf, 113 peace bloom, and 119 earthroot. That's about 1,377 gold from the raw ore, and about 1,736 gold from the raw herbs, for a combined raw value of 3,113. Already beating the raw mining, but after we do the processing and the Elwynn Shuffle, we only end up with 258 alabaster pigments, currently going for about 6 gold, 80 silver each, a whole lot less than what they used to. So that totals up to 1,754 gold from the herbs. And then once we factor in transferring the ore to bars to bolts, we land with about 3,978 gold total, and with the assorted gems, we'll round it to a clean 4,000 gold for the total gathered in this hour. And that's about 600 gold behind just pure mining, though to be fair, less AFK processing time. And finally, herbalism only. In this run, we were able to gather 202 earthroot, 154 peace bloom, and 256 silverleaf. That's a raw value of about 2,448 gold, and when we milled it all down, we netted 357 alabaster pigments, which totaled 2,426 gold. So, less than the herbs unprocessed. Amazing. Now, why is this? Why does mining come out on top, even when herbs are everywhere? Well, it comes down to 2 things. First, of course, is the mount efficiency. You're mounting and dismounting constantly. It adds up and it slows you down. But second, and almost more importantly, is the node yield. You see, each copper ore node gives between 2 and 4 copper ore, averaging out to about 3 per node. Herbs, on the other hand, only give 1 to 3, averaging about 2 and slightly lower. And on top of that, they are not converted on a 1-to-1 ratio in the shuffle. Copper ore gets converted in a 1-to-1 ratio to copper bolts. Every bar becomes a bolt and every bolt sells. But herbs? Well, we milled over 600 herbs and we ended up with less than 400 pigments. So the yield's not only lower, it's less consistent. And while the copper shuffle does take time, it's so AFK that you can't even count it. So unless pigment prices swing back up, I'm going to be sticking with pure copper ore farming as we work towards unlocking the next zone. Because at the end of the day, Goldilock may be stuck in Elwynn, but we can always optimize some of the grind time. And speaking of the next zone, let's pull up the map and talk about what's still locked. Once we hit our goal and earn enough gold to buy a WoW token, we will be spinning a wheel randomly to unlock the next zone, between the adjacent zones accessible by foot, tram, or boat. So when the time comes, this is going to be Westfall, Dunmoreau, or Redridge. Now, you might be wondering, isn't Duskwood a neighboring zone? Well, technically yes, it does share a border, but there is no intended path to get there from Elwynn. There's no road, no bridge, or no tunnel. You'd have to either fly across the river or swim through it. And if we allow that, what's stopping us from flying over any mountain and swimming across any river or ocean? So the rule is simple. If it's not designed for foot travel from the current zone, it doesn't count for the randomizer. Now, there is one path on the map that almost looks like it connects Duskwood to Elwynn. But if you take a closer look, it's pretty clear that it really connects the road into Redridge, and where we're standing now, I'm pretty sure is basically the furthest point in Elm we can go without triggering a discovery for Redridge. Now, to make sure this path was actually off limits until Redridge unlocks, I made a level 1 testing character, Path Tester. So we marched him right up to this contested edge and tried to slip onto the bridge without triggering any exploration for Redridge. But before we even got close, the exploration XP dinged in and Redridge was discovered. And since Path Tester just stepped into a locked zone, the screen lit up flashing red and tripping the alarm. And if you're wondering what add-on this is, it's zone locked. It's currently in development by Deju, but I think it's pretty cool so far. That confirms it. The path may look like a shortcut to Duskwood, but we need to have Redridge unlocked to use it. So, if you remember last episode, we capitalized on the zone rares for a few decent transmog drops. And we'll see if any of those sold in our mailbox clear out at the end of this episode. But for now, we want to expand the inventory, specifically with a few lower value items that have higher sale rates. And ideally, things that don't eat into our herbs and ores. So we ran a little tailoring gambit. I dug through the crafted items list that we have available in Elwynn, and found some interesting items. The best selling ones were shirts. Red, blue, white, and brown. All the basic color variants available in Elwynn, and all with sale rates between 0.3 and 0.5. And why do people buy them? Well, let's be honest. They look darn good. Sometimes gold isn't just about utility. It's about the vibe. And apparently, Elwynn cotton is in. And of course, it's not a gold mine, but not bad for some pocket change. To make the shirts, you primarily need linen cloth. And linen, well, it's not exactly growing on trees. So, to grab a few pieces of linen, I just did a loop around Elwynn, clearing out every humanoid pack that I could find. So basically, the Knoll packs around Hogger, the cut purses and dock hands, a few of the rogue wizards up in the northeast, and even some of the kobolds hanging out near the mine exits. Each shirt only costs a few cloth to craft, so after about an hour, we had enough stock for a modest inventory. And with that, we've added another, albeit small, income stream. So now while we're out mining copper or skinning boars, every once in a while, we see a shirt sell. Just a little extra gold quietly padding the coin pouch. Alright, so with another full week of farming, killing, skinning, mining, smelting, and auction house posting, it's time. Time to see exactly how much Goldilocks has pushed forward in the challenge to earn a WoW token. So, we haven't opened any mail since our last episode, so we're still sitting at 71,666 mails. Now I'm going to go ahead and blur out here the total gold, just so we have the big reveal at the end. But looking through and flipping through here, we can see a lot of the usual suspects and a lot of copper bolts. Each of these stacks is kind of usually when I've done a big farm session and I go on and post it. But a couple items that kind of jump out. You can see here we do have quite a few shirts selling for around 100 gold, and unfortunately frayed knots are about the same price as linen shirts now, which is a little bit unfortunate. But there was one item that I saw come through that was a little bit of a bigger item. So we do have the Kobold Mining Mallet that sold for 6.4k gold, which is crazy because that's like 2 to 3 hours of farming in the open world. So that makes a big chunk. And beyond that, I think the standard things were more copper bolts and just basic trade materials mixed in with a lot of shirts and randoms. So we're going to go ahead and open up all of these and see how much gold we actually got. So down in the right, we'll see it all flood in. Let's go. All right. So I think we are for sure going to break the 90k here, and it's still coming. Oh, there we go. 100k on Goldilocks, and we're still having more mails come in. Oh my goodness. Actually, we made a lot of progress this week. So that's the whole mailbox. We're sitting at 125,000 gold, which, if we look at the WoW token now, 270k, so it has gone up in price, so we're still below half of the value. And let's have a look here at the slash played. 3 days and 10 hours, so we're pretty far into our grind. Let's go into the ledger on Trade Skill Master for only Goldilocks and the last 7 days. So this should be most of what we just got, about 50,000 gold in the last 7 days. And our top selling item was the Kobold Mining Mallet. So we did manage to sell one of those, and we also sold some fingerless gloves. So those are the only kind of transmog-esque items. Those ones come from Thuros Lightfingers, so we'll add that to the coin purse, as well as a few frayed knots just for way below market value. And as you can see here, a couple of shirts coming through, which always add up to the value. But a big ticket item has been the handfuls of copper bolts. So let's go into the actual stats here. So in the last 30 days, in fact, the last 7 days alone, we've sold 27,673 worth of these, which is 4,172, and a total of 5,442 handfuls of copper bolts. So we've really been pushing those big time. We have sold some things as copper bars. For the most part, we're trying to sell the copper ores and copper bars as the bolts, because that is where we're getting a lot of our gold from. And just random gems and small greens. And then we just get into the vendor section, which is a lot of just random vendor trash that we didn't want to post on the auction house, and we just got some quick cash from that. So, not a bad week, and I think we really did define which farms are going to be making us the most money. And so far on Goldilocks, we've been doing our adventure and doing weekly updates with full mailbox clears. So let me know if you want to keep seeing it on a weekly basis, or if you'd rather have a bi-weekly section with more progress made in each episode. Either way, Goldilocks isn't stopping. Not until that WoW token is paid and Elwynn is in the rear view. And then, well, our journey will continue. So here's the next episode once it's posted, and here is the series if it's not posted yet. Thanks for watching.